Everyone, welcome to another underrated film Saturday. Today, I thought it would be interesting to briefly dive into a film that came out fairly recently, um, and that I managed to catch in theaters. And I think it's being put shoved a little bit under the bus. Um, Obviously, because I think a lot of critics didn't particularly care for this film. And I understand certain parts of the criticism, but at the same time, I don't think it's as horrible as a film that they are kind of really making it out to be. Um, and for a January film, it's actually pretty impressive. This film did come out in January, so when you look at the lineup of films that come out in January, it's usually pretty bad, at least within the United States. And I thought it'd be kind of interesting to dive into this particular film and kind of talk about my thoughts on it because I thought it was actually decent. Obviously, it is nowhere near anything of, you know, worth uh, the top 10 spot of the best, war films or something like that. I'm not saying that this film doesn't have a certain amount of problems with it. And even some of the criticism I can kind of get behind. But at the same time, I didn't think it was that horrible, and I thought actually some of the things that it did do right outweighed some of the things that people are sort of complaining about. So without further ado, let me address 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Yes, this is based upon the Benghazi incident that you probably, as an American, or if you're watching as an American, have been pretty heavily exposed with, considering we have this whole scandal that's sort of involved with the whole thing. Um, but right out of the gate, what I enjoy about this film is that it doesn't touch upon any of really the political stuff. I liked that it didn't try to kind of pander to a certain side of the sort of debate that we have with this particular incident, and instead just focused on the raw situation of what really ended up happening. Um, and the funny thing is this film, and I think another reason why people were sort of turned off by this film was because of Michael Bay. Uh, Michael Bay is really known for making action films that are uh, either fairly corny or just very out there and don't represent any resemblance of realism. But here it's very stripped down and it feels very kind of organic uh, to, I think, a certain extent. Again, and I think that's what I really appreciated about it was the fact that uh, Michael Bay did try to take a more serious tone to this film. And really did try to kind of give you a sort of more realistic picture of probably what it was like there, and sort of the whole emotions that were kind of a part of that scenario. And you really did sort of feel the tension, and at the same time, you kind of got a sense of, what the area was like, and so it really, I think, overall, as far as the atmosphere and everything, seemed to be well constructed and seemed to be a lot more down to earth, which is something that you don't really get to see in a lot of Michael Bay films. So that's why I was genuinely impressed with it when I was really exposed to it because I thought it was going to kind of I was wondering how Michael Bay was going to take this seriously, and he sort of tried to, um, in doing so, taking it seriously, kind of even paid tribute to the people that were sort of involved uh, uh, with this sort of event that ended up happening. That sort of turned into a tragedy, um, and uh, what also I think works as well is the acting is actually really good, and the characters are fairly likable. That's also something that you don't really see in a lot of Michael Bay films. Usually the characters are not that likable in a lot of his films. But here they feel very genuine, and they feel like these kind of Navy SEAL guys. They're very rugged. They got the beard going on, and they're working out constantly, and they play video games, and they're very they're very gritty type people. And it would make sense that, considering the people that were involved in Benghazi, that's the kind of people that would be sort of a part of the whole story. And I kind of liked how they did that, and I kind of liked how they had this sort of uptight CIA kind of guy, uh, who was supposed to be kind of the person sort of in charge of that whole area. Um, and I think it overall worked as far as the characters and the acting. Obviously, they weren't supposed to be like really in-depth characters, and they weren't designed to be in any way, shape, or form, I don't think, as memorable as much as they were supposed to be likable. And I think that's really the idea behind the film, was to make them like these people that were really down to earth. And I thought for overall they were pretty down to earth. Now, the thing that I think people are complaining about this particular film is the dialogue. There's some portions of the dialogue where, when you hear them talking, it kind of maybe sometimes sounds a little juvenile for some people. But personally, I think that's really how some of these guys talk. I mean, I don't think this is something that's kind of, you know, out of the ordinary. Yeah, maybe there are some times where within the dialogue you feel like, okay, why would they put it inserted here? But I think, it kind of gives a more organic feel to it. Because I think I think he was trying to convey sort of what it was like there. And, they kind of were just sort of hanging around at certain points. And then other points, there was a huge amount of intensity going on. So I could understand, them doing some kind of, you know, I can understand why that kind of juvenile humor would be sort of part of the film and part of that. I think, uh, I guess, I don't know if I would really call it culture as much as this is just the way in which these characters interact. It doesn't surprise me that they would talk to each other in this way. And I actually thought some of the funnier moments were actually kind of funny. I mean, obviously they were in a very, grim situation, but I think a lot of the way in which they kind of coped with it was sort of, creating this really relationship oriented environment. And I think a lot of the way in which these kinds of characters bond with each other is through jokes and insults. And it's not designed to be mean in any way, shape, or form. So I think that's kind of what that's why I kind of liked the jokes, because they weren't really kind of, they weren't politically correct jokes. And that's why I think it's refreshing to see that, especially when people are kind of walking on eggshells now as far as entertainment is concerned, on what to say and what not to say. And I don't think they were designed to be taken seriously. And I still think that they were genuinely likable characters overall. I don't think just inserting some jokes in there makes them all of a sudden, oh, they're mean or blah blah blah, or they don't understand the gravity of the situation. It's like, okay, I don't think that's really something that's really that big of a deal to complain about. Also, people, I think, complained about the fact that the film was kind of lengthy. And I will admit, I think, especially okay, this is what you're going to get with a majority of films nowadays. They are going to be more extensive than what they need to be. That's how a lot of films are going to go nowadays, because they want to push the amount of time that they can get people to sit and watch a film. Increasing film length is just kind of a part of the trend, and stretching things out way more than what they need to be. I think that's just something common to a lot of films nowadays. I don't think that just because this film does it, it's somehow worse than other films that do the exact same thing. that pad it out. And although there might be a little bit of padding, and maybe it does focus on the family dynamics a little bit too much, I didn't feel like it was as extensive as some other war films, in particular even recent ones like American Sniper, which I think a huge section of it was really devoted to the family dynamic. But here it's only in bits and pieces, and even if there is a flashback, one or two, I mean, it really doesn't, I think, put a huge amount of detriment to the film as a whole. I mean, obviously, people will complain about whatever and how it should be stripped to whatever bits and portions they want to strip it to. But to be honest, I don't think it's that much. I don't think this really ruins the whole experience for me. I mean, personally, yeah, did it make it a little bit more lengthy than it needed to be? Yeah, sure. And I think they could have maybe gotten to the whole event a lot sooner had they cut certain bits out, which I think would have, again, been a little bit, would have, I think, allowed a little bit more consistency. But at the same time, I don't think it puts a huge damper on it either. Um, so yeah, I think those were the really two main criticisms that I found with this particular film. Um, and again, I understand if there's people out there who didn't particularly care for this film or didn't like it because of whatever reason. Um, but to be honest, I thought that overall, when you really look at the things that Michael Bay has been known for to do bad at, like, giving very unlikable characters, doing explosions for no reason, um, just going balls off the wall as far as the story is concerned, to have him actually put together a film that takes itself seriously and at the same time gives likable characters and then they have good performances. And on top of that, you don't create a political spin to it. Um, I think it works. I think it's actually one of the more impressive Michael Bay films that I've seen, actually. Um, because when I look at a lot of his other films, like the Transformer films and, Pearl Harbor, I can really tell that there wasn't a huge amount of authenticness to any of what was going on. But I think here, he took the materials, at least from what I could tell, fairly seriously. And again, are there bits and moments where you could argue as to whether or not this resembles any way, shape, or form, Michael Bay's approach to certain things? Yeah, I obviously can see that. And again, that's through, I think, the humor and just the way the film is overall presented. But for what I think I got, I mean, I was actually impressed with it, more so than I was fairly critical of it. But I understand that there's people who think differently than me, but personally, I think it's getting shoved under the bus because of those two main criticisms that I brought up, and because a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think Michael Bay's name is tied to it, and I think a lot of people got tired of Michael Bay after a while. But here, I think he actually did a pretty decent job. I mean, obviously, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm not saying this is in any way, shape, or form a classic by any stretch of the imagination. But at the same time, I think it was still tapping into some things that I think were impressive as far as a story about Benghazi is concerned. But you can really take that for what it's worth. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.